Understanding capitalist alienation is important for understanding Marxist theory and to understand why there are so many social ills that capitalism just doesn't have an answer for, like mass shootings. It's an important part of our psyche. Hi, I'm Jason Unruhe and welcome to Manuscripts News. If you're interested in Marxist perspective news and commentary, then go ahead and hit the subscribe button and click the bell so you don't miss a single video. Alienation is a central part of Marxist critique of capitalism. Its inherent flaws via contradiction that would lead to its eventual downfall, as we see today, this being more of a collapse ending rather than a revolutionary act of overthrow. It explains why people are alienated from other people and themselves. This, some propose, is the primary driver in the widespread mental illness we see today. To Marx, this was the source of Entfremdung, or alienation of labor. This was caused, in the simplest of terms, by the worker not owning the commodities that they create. Human beings are unique on this planet in that we are aware of our existence and our ability to affect the world itself. We have needs and wants as a part of humanity. When those needs and wants are not met, our labor power is used to accomplish them or to get them. And we understand our labor power through getting those things. We understand this by our ability to affect the world around us. We understand ourselves and each other by our ability to carry out activity. According to his theory, we are alienated in four primary ways. The worker is related to the product of his labor as to an alien object. This is another way of saying that what is produced by the worker is the property of the capitalist or landlord. Alienation within the producing activity itself. This refers to the worker's relationship to the work he is doing, becomes an alien activity that does not belong to him. Estranged labor estranges the species from man. Being estranged from the product of their labor and the labor process, the worker becomes alienated from their humanity. Estrangement of man from man. Being alienated from the product of their labor and being alienated from humanity, individual workers become alienated from each other. So why is all of this so important? And why is it so heavily related to the act of performing labor? It is the central point. Human beings are social animals no matter what capitalism or anything else tries to tell us. We must interact and have relationships with other people for our psyche to function. A person's consciousness is determined socially via our relationships. Marx shows that this societal existence is determined by carrying out the tasks which we undertake to survive. These tasks are by their very nature something that must be carried out in cooperation with other people. This cooperation, which we know as our relationship to the means of production, has taken different forms over human history, like capitalism, feudalism, hunter-gatherer society, etc. Each of these had their own degree of alienation to some point or another, and its own corresponding human nature. We currently live in capitalism, where one social class, the capitalists, own and control the means of production. They are used to produce as much profit for individuals in that class as possible. The worker is the everyday regular person who operates those means of production as dictated by the capitalists. The products of the worker's labor are owned by the capitalist. The worker cannot express themselves through direct purposeful activity. Their labor, that which contributes to the whole, is alienated from him by his wage labor. His activity is sold to a capitalist for an hour wage. That labor is no longer his, but a commodity that belongs to the capitalist. This is the primary mode by which alienation manifests itself in capitalism. Or, as Marx himself put it, let us suppose that we had carried out production as human beings. Each of us would have, in two ways, affirmed himself and the other person. In my production, I would have objectified my individuality, its specific character, and therefore enjoyed not only an individual manifestation of life during the activity, but also when looking at the object. I would have the individual pleasure of knowing my personality to be objective, visible to the senses, and hence a powerful power beyond all doubt. In your enjoyment or use of my product, I would have the direct enjoyment, both of being conscious of having satisfied a human need by my work, that is, of having objectified man's essential nature, and of having thus created an object corresponding to the need of another man's essential nature. Our products would be so many mirrors in which we saw reflected our own essential nature. A worker is now a mechanical part in the process that which satisfies our wants and needs through production, not something, an activity that we actively participate in to satisfy each other. We are alienated from it. Does this mean the capitalist is also experiencing alienation? Marx says yes. He says that they are equally alienated, but experience it differently. The propertied class and the class of the proletarian present the same human self-estrangement, but the former class feels at ease and strengthened by this self-estrangement. It recognizes estrangement as its own power, and has in it the semblance of a human existence. The class of the proletariat feels annihilated. This means that they cease to exist in estrangement. It sees in its own powerlessness and in reality of an inhuman existence. It is, to use an expression of Hegel, in its abasement, the indignation at that abasement, an indignation to which is necessarily driven by the contradiction between human nature and its condition of life, which is the outright, resolute, and comprehensive negation of that nature. Within this antithesis, the private property owner is therefore the conservative side, and the proletarian the destructive side. From the former arises the action of preserving the antithesis, from the latter the action of annihilating it. This is all bound up with the idea of the species essence, die Gattungswesen, as Marx said. That makes up humanity. This species essence is a part of the labor which a person performs. That labor expresses the potential as a person. It is the mental existence of human beings that live as a collective of interests that forward the survival and psychological well-being of the species. This is carried out by emotional connections with other people, with society itself. In Marx's theory, the psychological value of a person is based on the ability to act with purpose, to achieve a definite end, which are purposeful ideas. The thinking is specifically separate from the actions required to realize a given idea. The thing that they produce is the object, while they themselves the subject. This stands in contrast to the animal, which cannot see the subject or the object. An animal can only act in an immediate self-sustaining action. It cannot have future intentions, nor conscious intention. This conforms to and proves another important aspect of Marx's theory, the materialist dialectic. Marx expresses in his famous Feuerbachian inversion that it is not the idea of the human essence or nature that produces its concrete existence, but its concrete existence that produces the idea. So this is the basis of alienation according to Marx. So how does it manifest? Well, in our current advanced level of capitalism, we see it as a very real source of mental illness within society. In my opinion, some of the best work we have on modern alienation comes from the American sociologist Melvin Seeman. During his time, he was the foremost authority on alienation. Today, his writing Studies in Alienation, collected papers of Melvin Seeman are invaluable for anyone wishing to study the subject, as well as On the Meaning of Alienation from 1959. It is important to remember here that Marx describes what causes alienation. What Seeman describes is how alienation manifests. Alienation can best be defined as a real or perceived inadequacy in the person in relation to the rest of the world. The person experiencing alienation sees the world and society as something outside themselves, as opposed to being something they exist inside and a part of. Using primarily Karl Marx and Emil Durkheim, he formulated his theories on the subject. From it, he theorized 5 aspects of expressions of alienation, and a 6th, which did not appear until much later. Powerlessness. It can best be summed up as an inability to produce desired outcomes through one's own actions. Seeman believed in the Marxian view of the alienated worker. It can also manifest as being aware of a gap between what a person would like to do and what they feel capable of doing. Meaninglessness. Seeman described meaningless as being characterized by a low expectancy that satisfactorily predictions about future outcomes of behavior can be made. Powerlessness is an ability to control outcomes. Meaninglessness is an inability to predict outcomes. Normlessness. Generally a state in which the social norms governing behavior and social interaction have failed to influence an individual or individuals. The rules are essentially no longer effective. It often leaves an alienated person with an inability to associate with the prevailing values of society. In a particular capitalist context, in my opinion, as Seeman said, a high expectancy that socially unapproved behaviors are required to achieve given goals. Isolation. Most commonly seen as being separate from the rest of a community. This, I believe, is the most common form of alienation outside of production. This is particularly distressing for people because as human beings, we need to have connections with the other people. This is particularly bad for capitalism as relationships and connections are replaced with economic transactions and relationships. Exploitation of this form of alienation is the basis for cults and extremist groups. Self-estrangement. Seeman, like Marx, saw self-estrangement as the heart of alienation. It is commonly described in sociological circles as a psychological condition in which a person will seek out extrinsically satisfying rather than intrinsically satisfying activities. This can manifest as an inability of a person to define themselves, lacking self-knowledge, or having a feeling of authenticity. Interestingly, this is heavily connected to early work on psychological illness. Before the early 20th century, psychiatry believed that all mental disturbances were the result of a person being separated from themselves, their ability to reason, or the world. In this way of thinking, all mental illness would have appeared as a form of schizoid taken from psychoanalytic theory. A great breakthrough came when a materialist standpoint began to be adopted by psychology. Scottish psychiatrist R.D. Laing was important to modern psychiatric thought that dysfunctional families and socioeconomic disadvantages caused alienation and ontological insecurity. Many believed these to be adaptations. However, now we understand them to be disorders by psychiatry. Alienation can best describe mass shooters by saying they reject modern social world because it appears to them not as a home, even though it objectively is. Well, that's going to do it for this video. I hope it gave you some insight into alienation, Marxism, and even some sociology. If you do have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comment section below. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you would like to help create more content like this, then please head over to my Patreon page and help give a monthly donation, even as small as $1 a month. Even that small amount helps keep these videos running. Thank you for watching. Thank you for watching. If you like this program, then please head over to my Patreon page and set up a monthly donation. It's your donations that keep this program running. Also, if you would like, please rate, comment, subscribe, and share in various social media.